Now, I can hear you say, well, Ian, you know what, we're too small. We don't have the money to go out and re-engineer a sales process. We don't have the money to bring in an expert to design one for us. Don't worry about that. In my experience working with sales organizations and going out and meeting with sales teams on really a daily, weekly basis, typically this is what I see. If a sales organization has 10 salespeople, then chances are they'll have 10 different selling processes going on at any one time within their organization. Everybody really following their own sales process. Well, what other part of the organization would you use a multiple, untested, and ad hoc process? You know, it's just ludicrous, isn't it? I mean, can you imagine your accounting department running multiple untested processes? Yet, even with all the research, and there's a tremendous amount of research and evidence today that backs up and proves the undeniable value of having a well-constructed and customer-centric sales performance process, still there are sales teams operating out there on a wing and a prayer. So let's talk about science before art. If you ask the average salesperson, how do you sell? They say, well, I do a little bit of this, I do a bit of that. There's an art to what I do. Actually, wrong. Before the art always comes the science. Before the cake comes the recipe. And in fact, a process is usually defined as a particular course of action intended to achieve a result. Science is really the recipe. It's the step-by-step, follow the bouncing ball way of doing something. And once you've got the science down, then comes the art. You know, how many of you have a family member, or maybe you yourself personally, that likes to cook or that likes to bake, just kind of throwing a little bit of this and a little bit of that together? And out comes this wonderful, wonderful gourmet concoction. Well, my grandmother used to bake like that. A little bit of this, a bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it always came out perfect, always exactly the same. Sometimes I'd watch her, sometimes she'd put in 3 tablespoons of sugar, and sometimes if it was 2 tablespoons of sugar, if she didn't have cinnamon, she'd put in nutmeg, and yet it always came out the same. The question that I would ask you was there ever a time, do you think, that my grandmother, or your grandmother for that matter, actually had to learn a recipe? And the truth is, yes, there was a time that my grandmother and your grandmother and you yourself followed a recipe. You followed a step-by-step methodology. And only once you'd gotten that methodology down did you now allow the creation, the art, to enter into the picture. And really, this is no different when it comes to increasing your win rates as a sales leader. First, you need to establish the science, the best practice approach, the best way to sell what you sell in the markets in which you sell. Then you teach that process to your team. And only after that core recipe has been specifically designed and tested and your sales performance process has been learned and practiced over and over again, only then can your salespeople begin to move from the science, if you like, to the art, and now start to sculpt their own techniques and tactics. In the report I sent you, if you follow the card trick, you understand the power of process. And in the book, Bulletproof Your Sales Team, I walk you through another exercise which also highlights for you the power of process. And I'm going to do that right now with you. So right now, close your eyes. And I want you to think of a number from 1 to 10. Got it? Okay. Now, multiply that number by 9. Okay, now if your answer is a 2-digit number, add the two of them together. So, for example, if your answer was 28, you've got 2 plus 8. Done? All right, now subtract 5 from that number in your head. Okay? Now I want you to think of a letter in the alphabet that corresponds with the number that you now have. So as an example, if you're thinking of number 1, it's going to be represented by the letter A. If you're thinking of 2, it will be B, 3, C, 4, D, etc. Now once you've got the letter, I want you to think of a country that begins with that letter. Tough one, I know. You got one? Great. Now I want you to think about the second letter in that country's name. Got it? The second letter in that country's name. And I want you to think of an animal whose name begins with that letter. And finally, I want you to think of the color of that animal. All right, now, if you followed our process to the T, you'll be left with a grey elephant from Denmark. Every now and then, being in Australia, we sometimes get a grey emu or a grey echidna. Then sometimes we get some people who couldn't think of a country start beginning with the letter D, and there are some people who have a broad enough geographic mindset that they come up with Djibouti or Dominican Republic. But in general, most people, in fact, when I do this in a group, I would say probably anywhere between 75 and 80% of the audience will come up with a grey elephant from Denmark. So here's an exercise for you. Go out. I want you to go out and try this. Go out sometime today, and I want you to pick 5 people, and I want you to run them through this exercise. And let's see your numbers. Let's see if they tally up with mine. This grey elephants from Denmark process really is no different to a well-defined, well-engineered sales performance process. Once you've refined, once you've tested a powerful sales performance process, which is customer-centric, it will start to work for you and your business, start to get the consistency that you've been looking for. Often in an organization, we have what we call a rainmaker. So these are the salesperson or the salespeople or sales executive who are absolutely exceptional at bringing in business. And so many times I hear managers say, if only I could clone that person. We struggle to find them, and when we've got them, oftentimes we struggle to keep them. These are the absolutely gifted, the talented individuals. These are the people that we say could sell ice to Eskimos. These are the Roger Federers, the Tiger Woods of selling. And we look back at what they do and how they do it, and we're struck with a certain amount of wonder. Yes, they have the skills. Yes, they have the knowledge. But more importantly, underpinning all of that is just pure natural talent. And really, our experience as sales managers tells us that there is only a tiny percentage of salespeople that fall into this category of rainmaker. And really, these top gun salespeople tend to kind of follow their own unique roadmap for sales success. They have their own blueprint, which is in many cases just a subconscious process. It's their own instinctive recipe for bringing in business, and it's very, very hard to copy. So if rainmakers make up only a small percentage of the population, then the balance of the sales population must have a specific and tested pathway to follow, which details the most effective way to make a sale. And as sales leaders, we need to provide our salespeople with those appropriate roadmaps and tools to ensure that their journey is successful. It is this winning roadmap that's otherwise known as a sales performance process.